Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Deckled Edges. I'm your host, Camilla, and today we are back with another episode. It is beginning to look a lot like Christmas and also the end of 2024 and the end of the first year of Deckled Edges. Now, coming up soon, aka next episode, is going to be a return to our usual content with another incredible book, as always. But I thought today we would do a special yearly recap episode and do a quick recap of all the books that we've gone over this year, every episode we've done, and really just do something fun with this opportunity. I really hope that you appreciate the break from and forgive the break from the usual book analysis, but I really think this is a good way to revisit everything we've accomplished this year and really just say happy birthday to Deckled Edges, happy anniversary to Deckled Edges. And, I think we're gonna have a good time, do a little bit of a more lighthearted approach to these books and revisit them. So let's go. I would just like to say how grateful I am for everyone who tuned in, even to listen just one episode or a few minutes of this podcast this year. This podcast has truly been so special for me. It's been such a good way for me to really get my thoughts out into the universe and to interact with reading in a new and really in a way that made it interesting for me. Not that reading was ever not interesting, but really got me out of a sort of reading slumps and motivated me to keep interacting with literature in a really intentional way, even in some of the most busy, challenging times, especially this past year. End of junior year, beginning of senior year really were difficult and jam-packed. So to have a place, to have a medium to unwind and really express myself was really a blessing. So thank you so much to everyone who has listened, who is still listening, and there is definitely much more to come in the upcoming year, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so midway through filming this, I had an epiphany about what this episode would actually be about. And so instead of doing a ranking or anything of the sort, because I think that wouldn't really make sense, because I love all the books I do on here, and why would I ever subject them to arbitrary rankings? So instead, we're going to be doing an award show / slideshow night. Shout out Varsity Crew Team for giving me the idea, where we're just going to be assigning award show awards to each of my episodes, and not just the books in the episodes as a whole. So let's do it. Let's do it, shall we? I think this will be fun. And I had some fun brainstorming it for longer than I'd like to admit. So let's do it. Okay, so let's start with the first episode, shall we? This first episode is a really big throwback to all the way back in January 1st of 2024. Can you believe it? It's almost been an entire year, and now I'm getting sentimental, reminiscing on all of the crazy things that happened this year. But it was Philip Pullman. Philip Pullman was the big star of this episode. The Book of Dust, his follow-up trilogy to his magnum opus, The Golden Compass. I would call it that. I don't know if everyone agrees with me. Don't call me out on that. But the award I'm giving to this one, drumroll please, is Coastal Rowing Final Boss, because really, Malcolm really went all out in this one. He took that canoe and he took it the whole 7 miles. I don't know if that's the expression, but that canoe saw some things, and saw far too many things it shouldn't have seen, things it was never intended to have seen. Magical things, not so magical things, upsetting things. Many a tear were shed in that canoe. So for those that know what coastal rowing is, and for those that don't, I'll give you a quick recap. Coastal rowing is a spin-off, a spoof, if you will, on the sport of rowing, where instead of rowing in tumultuously, supposedly flat waters and long, straight race courses, they row in the choppy ocean waters of the coast, of wherever they are. And they also apparently have to pick up the boat and run with it, so it's also a running race. And you know what? I've heard it's a blast. But yes, shout out to Malcolm, Coastal Rowing Final Boss, in London, also appropriately, since that is the birthplace of rowing. So maybe too niche of an award, but starting out strong. I love that episode too. It's Short, sweet, and the start of my podcast, so always very dear to me. Anyways, on to the next. Okay, for the second episode, I have 2 awards because this one was like a double header of Kaladin and Dalinar, and The Way of Kings is just too chunky, too convoluted of a book to just give 1 award to, so I'm gonna do 2 for this episode. And forgive me if you can tell that I'm getting a little bit excitable, a little bit hyper, all over the place, frazzled, if you will. This is a very casual episode, and I'm having a bit too much fun. Anyways, so the award I wrote for Kaladin is he's the most likely to have a breakdown midair, but still catch you, because that's just who he is. He's noble, he's selfless, he's a little bit too reckless, almost suicidal maybe, but he will still catch you. He's so reliable. He loves his friends more than anything, more than himself. And he will have a breakdown. He has many of those. He is known for them, and we love that about him. I love that about him. Besides, you can't have an overpowered character and have them be mentally stable, right? No, it's just not how it works. So, okay, love you, Kaladin. Love you. Let's move on. Let's continue. Dalinar. My mic hates me because I'm literally tweaking in front of the microphone, but that's okay. That's okay. Okay, anyways, Dalinar wins most righteous war criminal because the war crimes this man has committed, the absolute atrocities that he has committed on the field. And yet he still manages to be such a good guy, the most upstanding, by the book, by the codes, honorable guy you'll ever meet. So I like Dalinar. And his war crimes, they can be swept under the rug. Because he's also kind of a tweaker. A little bit. But it's cool. He's the chosen one, honestly. Like, he has all this crazy stuff to process, and everyone thinks he's insane, and yeah. Some may call it hypocritical, but I call it multifaceted. I'm just kidding, to be honest. I haven't gotten far enough in the series to really understand him fully as a character, but I'm sure there's a lot of war crimes committed, and I don't know if they can be ignored. But he's so good-natured, and he's such a good guy, and he just has all this weight on his shoulders. So, anyway, moving on. Okay. Next up, episode 3. We're on the 3rd episode already. We're really going through them. Shallan, shall we say. Somehow this is one of the worst performing episodes on here, which, give my girl Shallan some love. But I also do think that this was, one of my most yap-heavy episodes, so I kind of forgive you there. But, anyways, Shallan gets the best performance in being fine when she's absolutely not fine. I think that's the best way to describe Shallan. She's really all over the place. Somehow she is such a convincing actress that she manages to get herself in the most convoluted, weirdest, strangest heist plot movie of all time, and convinces herself that she can pull it off without guilt or emotional attachment, with no prior experience at all. But she's fine. She's fine. Right? She's fine. She doesn't even have powers, or she totally is chill with learning how to use them, and yeah, she's fine. She's not. Okay. I was gonna do Adeline, but honestly, it's okay. I don't think I need to. So, episode 4, reading list time. Isn't that fun? I remember this one because, yes, these books are all theoretically on my reading list, and I think I did an okay job at presenting them, but it was also at a point in my time when I was starting this podcast, genuinely in the very beginning, before I pre-recorded these first 4, and I didn't really plan this one out so well, so I didn't actually end up reading any of these books on this list, which is really embarrassing, low-key, but I will in the future, especially Hyperion. So I want to shout out Hyperion. But to give myself some grace, this was a very busy year. So I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it. Okay, anyway, award for this one. The award I gave this one was Best Dust Collector, which is really sad, but, the books collected dust on my theoretical shelf. But honestly, I just didn't get to it. Sue me. Yeah, but trust me, they were probably good recs. Like, I would never fail you. Okay, the one I gave Words of Radiance, episode 5, is really silly, like extraordinarily silly. But here we go. Episode 5, Words of Radiance, was like a group project in a group therapy session where no one wants to be there and no one does any work, but it gets done eventually, So yeah, that I think Words of Radiance was a great book. I loved Words of Radiance a lot. But definitely there was a lot to unpack and a lot happened. So that's what I would give that one. There's just so many characters and none of them want to be there and everyone is miserable, but like they're all sort of getting therapy. No, they're not. But it's reminiscent of group therapy, just like the start of group therapy, but they plunge you into a group project right away and you never have time to get anything done, but you acknowledge that you're all there and you all have trauma. So yeah, Words of Radiance, everyone. Yeah. You all should go listen to that episode. I genuinely think that was a good one. And I also think that you should read the Stormlight Archive. Shameless Brandon Sanderson plug. I know we haven't done Brandon Sanderson in a long time on this podcast, but that's just because, I haven't had time to sit through a big book in a while. But we'll get back. I promise. We'll get back. Okay, moving on. Next episode 6, My Darling, My Love. I love White Knights. I love this little story. I thought it was so lovely. But it does get the award for conversations that you make up in your head in the shower. Love stories, love plots that you make up in your head in the shower. Because, man, could I reenact a good Nastenka and unnamed dreamer guy in Dostoevsky, bro? Man, this guy overthinks. This guy is dramatic. He talks and talks about his love and his dreary life and how she brought color to his days, and he knew her for 4 days. But it was beautiful. And who knows, it could be a 4-day shower saga. Very melodramatic, very much my cup of tea, very philosophical, longing, dreamy. For who could live and not have a story to tell? What a lovely quote. Love that book. You should go listen to that episode. You should go read it. It's free online. I promise. You'll love it. Okay, moving on. Okay, for some reason I had some trouble coming up with one for Brave New World, even though it's brave. There's so many. But I think that was also part of the problem. But what I came up with was IVF gone wrong, which is, okay, that's really out there. But, if you're going to have hundreds of babies from one tube, yeah, I'd say it's gone wrong. And then it's basically eugenics, and then it's basically, everything that could possibly go wrong. And half of them are born into sweatshop labor, and half of them are born into... Actually, all of them are born into brainwashing and drug addiction from the second they pop out the test tube. So yeah, that's what I chose. Brave New World, lovely book. Give it a try. Might disturb you for ages, but give it a try. I feel like I've been so energetic this episode, but maybe it's just because we're doing our first ever yearly recap. Wow. Celebrating a year is kind of crazy, but I don't want to do it preemptively. So let's just finish this recap out, shall we? We have a few more to go. So next is Between Shades of Grey. Oh, what a dear book to me. And what a dear author to me, because she was actually on this podcast. Plug, hint. But for Between Shades of Grey, in specific, I give most likely to make you hug your family immediately after reading it. Because, yeah, I know these are supposed to be funny, but truly this was such a sad book. And it was really good. But yeah, I definitely gave extra hugs to my family that night. Okay, as we're nearing the latter half of our catalog, we only have a few more episodes to go. But next up is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. What a long name. And for that long name, the award that this book gets is Never Judge a Book by Its Title. because this one sure has a lot of it. But if you're willing to look past the mouthful that you have to say whenever someone asks what you're reading, it really is a lovely book about found family and set during the war, World War II, a very interesting perspective, and a lovely book, character driven and uniquely written. So I would say check it out, but don't be turned off by the title because it's a mouthful. Anyways, okay, moving on. Next episode, The Art Thief. This episode gets 2 awards, one for the purpose of the episode and one for the book itself. So for the episode, I give better than SparkNotes, because let's be real, it was better than SparkNotes. Maybe 20 minutes of your time and you're as good as you're ever gonna get on that book. No, but generally, I think I did a pretty good job that time about running down best things to highlight about the book and my favorite parts of it in true Deckled Edges fashion. We don't do things for an ulterior motive. We do things for the love of the book. So, next, for the book itself, like I've been doing, because, we deviated from the original plan, but that's how it is on the fly. For the book itself, I give most impressive borrowing of priceless objects I've ever seen. I am telling you, that man borrowed and borrowed and borrowed like he wouldn't have to pay his credit card bill. Oh my gosh. Revisiting books is so funny because it's almost as if once you read a book, you get the same kind of feeling after you finish a TV show and you're with these characters for so long, and then all of a sudden they're gone and there's no outlet to kind of express that hole that they leave, and okay, that's dramatic, but I feel like that's why people turn to communities, to fan art, to fan bases in general, because they need a way to interact with the material that extends beyond the scope of the limited material itself. And for me, I'm not a big rereader of books because I feel like there's so many new ones to explore, but there are definitely ones that I would revisit. But in this way, for a lot of these books, even if I'm not going to directly reread them, doing exercises like this I think is really important to really show that it's not just a one-off, that you are able to interact with these carefully crafted and great stories in more ways than one, and revisit it and still feel and revisit those emotions from months or weeks or days ago when you last put the book down. So this is a really great exercise and I'm glad we're doing it. So we only have a couple more, so on to the next. So finally, of all the books we've done this year, this is the last truly episode that focused on a book, and that's the Da Vinci Code. And so to the Da Vinci Code, I give the most likely to make you want to go on a treasure hunt. I really want to go on a treasure hunt after reading this book. I mean, despite some of its flaws, I really, really did enjoy this book, and I appreciate the intricacy that people take to really research and develop and put into place a puzzle and a treasure hunt piece like this. And man, I just wish I feel like a treasure hunt is one of those things that used to be a bigger deal than it is now. I think also ancient Egypt was also once a bigger deal than it is now. And we used to go on these rabbit holes as kids, and I feel like this was kind of a universal experience where there are just some things like cloning. What happened to that? There were some things that universally captivated our interest, and then all of a sudden, they're no longer at the forefront of our minds anymore. And I really think a treasure hunt is one of those things. Put me in, coach. I really, man, it just makes you long for a greater adventure. And finally, at long last, we have reached the end of my repertoire of episodes from this year. We have reached the final episode of 2024. My lovely interview with Miss Ruta Shapetis, our first author interview, and there's really, I don't know if I can encompass my gratitude for this episode into an award, but I would have to say, if I had to choose, I would call it the most gratifying coffee date of all time, because it really was that. It was an hour of lovely conversation, and we covered so many topics, and I feel like there was so much wisdom that we were able to impart about reading, about books, about life in general, about the way that you research and go about the industry, and the path that life can take you in order to get to an eventual calling, an eventual passion for something. And I feel like we were really able to impart that upon you listeners, and it was just such a great way to close off the year, to close off 1 year of Deckled Edges, and this is my way of kind of making a tribute to that. Happy birthday, Deckled Edges, and thank you, all you lovely listeners. I think that this was a wonderful year, and I cannot wait for this new year. 2025 will be a great year for Deckled Edges. More books to come, like I said. Upcoming episode, The Sirens of Mars. Such a good book, and I cannot wait to share my thoughts about it with you guys. So as always, thank you so much for listening to this more lighthearted recap episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed 1 year of Deckled Edges. And as always, I will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.